New Orleans wasn't just built on graves, swamps, and storms. It wasn't even built for the living. Something started here long ago, and it never ended. There are bones under your feet, spells carved into the doorways, and one house so cursed its secrets burn through the walls. You've heard of voodoo, you've heard of jazz, but you haven't heard what they were meant to contain. Because behind the parades and costumes, this city hides a ritual, and it's still unfolding right beneath the music. Every year, tourists flood into New Orleans to party with the dead, and they don't even realize it. At first glance, this is a place of color and celebration, of jazz, costumes, and parades. But look closer, and you'll see a city built on contradictions. A party that dances on tombs, a civilization that rose where no life should thrive. Beneath every cobblestone lies bone. Above every doorway, a spell. And if you ask the old gravekeepers, they'll tell you, some cities bury their dead. New Orleans invites them to stay. It is a city built for them. Tonight we will uncover the dark past of New Orleans. A history that twists faith into fear, ritual into repetition, and tragedy into tradition. This is a place where real voodoo magic shaped politics, where disease felt like a demon, and where even music was used to ward off death. Let us begin. It started quite literally with death. Founded in 1718 on a swampy bend of the Mississippi River, the city was born in defiance of nature. The land was unstable, the air was thick with rot, and yet the French settlers persisted. They drained the swamps, paved over bones, and built a fragile dream, never realizing that the soil itself was cursed with memory. And some houses held onto that memory more than others. One in particular, behind elegant ironwork and shuttered windows, hid horrors that the city tried to forget. A torture room, the fire and unpunished horrible crimes of a noblewoman. It still stands today. We'll return to that mansion and its screaming silence later on. As the years passed, New Orleans grew, not just in size, but in superstition. Cemeteries became cities of their own, their stone vaults rising like miniature temples. This wasn't just practical, it was spiritual. The dead were not meant to be hidden here. They were meant to be watched, respected, feared. Haunted voodoo shops didn't appear by accident, nor did the rituals. According to historian Ina Fandrich, the spiritual traditions of West Africa fused with Catholic iconography to create a unique cosmology, one that never separated the physical from the spiritual. In this world, Marie Laveau was not a myth. She was mayor of the unseen. But here's the question that still haunts the city. Did New Orleans embrace the dead out of reverence or out of fear? Because no matter how grand the tombs, the floods always returned, and with them, the bodies. In 1788, the Great Fire devoured most of the city. In 1816, the cemeteries overflowed, and every time disaster came, the rituals grew stronger, as if the city was trying to appease something. Some say it worked. Others say the city was already a ritual, and it simply never ended. Have you heard a version of this story before? Share it below, because the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes. New Orleans didn't survive despite its ghosts. It survived because of them. And not all of them are sleeping. Brides in coffins. They called them les filles à la cassette, the girls with the small chests, but their trunks were shaped like coffins, and what came with them never seemed to leave. In the early 18th century, ships arrived in New Orleans carrying a strange cargo, young women sent from France to marry colonists. These weren't noble daughters. Many were orphans. Some were prisoners. All were bound to strangers in a land soaked in death and fever. Locals nicknamed them the Casket Girls, not because they carried death, but because death followed. Their arrival coincided with outbreaks of disease, and then came the whispers. The house they stayed in, the old Ursuline convent, still stands. Its attic is sealed shut, permanently. Why? Records show the attic windows were nailed closed in the 1750s, but the shutters face inward, not to keep people out, but to keep something in. A priest at the time described unholy disturbances and claimed the attic refused the blessing of silence. Could it all be coincidence? Or was something deliberately hidden in the ritual of their arrival? Over time, the story morphed. Some said the Casket Girls brought vampires. Others claimed the trunks were coffins. When they were later found empty, rumors exploded. Many creepy stories from New Orleans trace back to this moment, a mix of myth, guilt, and dread. But historian Emily Clark argues the real horror was social. The Casket Girls symbolized a transaction of bodies, a forced union between power and obedience, sealed with fear. If stories like this stay with you, subscribe to our channel. We uncover the rituals, the buried truths, the ghosts that never left. And if this already gave you chills, like this video and share it with your friends. It helps us keep the story alive. Now, let's continue. The killer who wanted jazz. He said he would strike again, but only if you didn't play jazz. That night, the city trembled. Every home, every bar, every street pulsed with music, and the Axeman vanished into myth. In March 1919, the Times-Picayune published a letter, allegedly from the killer, declaring himself a spirit, a demon, who would spare anyone playing jazz at 12:15 a.m. The city obeyed. From the French Quarter to the bayou, horns blared. People danced not to celebrate, but to survive. No one was killed, and then silence. The Axeman's reign had already shaken New Orleans' murder history. Starting in 1918, he broke into homes at night, attacking couples with their own axes. He never stole, never fled. He left blood, splinters, and mystery. But what kind of killer writes threats like scripture? And what kind of city answers with music? Some say it was a psychological game. Others believe it echoed something older, a revival of real voodoo magic. Jazz here was never just music, it was ritual. Music historian John Swenson wrote, "Jazz in New Orleans evolved not only from rhythm, but from ritual, funerals, possessions, spirit dances." The Axeman tapped into that code, and the city answered in kind. Even now, the line between music and magic blurs. Funeral marches summon spirits. Brass bands lead the dead through the streets, and some say certain notes can still wake something up. The Axeman was never caught. At least 6 victims, and no closure. Just a letter, and a city that played. Because he asked for jazz, and he got it. So was it a killer or a ritual? Because in New Orleans, even murder follows a rhythm. Fever dreams, and the birth of the dead who walk. The bodies piled faster than the city could bury them. Some were still twitching when sealed inside. That's how the dead began to rise, not in stories, but in screams. In the 19th century, New Orleans was struck again and again by yellow fever. Thousands died in weeks, but the real terror came from how the living responded. Burials were rushed, graves were shallow, family names were lost, and in the chaos, rumors crept in. The dead were returning. What happens when a soul isn't sent off properly? By the 1820s, reports emerged of people clawing their way out of tombs. Most were Fever Days survivors, buried alive, but the legend spread faster than the disease. Locals began speaking of zombie from Haitian Creole, meaning a body without a soul. Not monsters, but victims, denied proper death, cursed to wander. This wasn't Hollywood. In voodoo belief systems, zombies weren't predators, they were punished. Anthropologist Wade Davis later argued that real voodoo magic enforced social order by turning the untrustworthy into the undead. In New Orleans, the idea stuck. The dead wouldn't stay down. Gravekeepers locked tombs from the outside. Crosses were scratched into stone. Coins left at doorways. Families stopped speaking the names of their dead, fearing it might call them back. Witchcraft in New Orleans wasn't always about curses. It was protection, drawing lines between the living and unresolved. The fires eventually ended the plague, but the myths stayed. Even now, some graves are sealed with 7 types of brick and blessed in 3 languages. Because if the ritual isn't complete, the body might not rest. Bones along the river. They called it a rebellion. The city called it a threat. History barely called it anything at all. In January 1811, a quiet fire lit the German coast upriver from New Orleans, not with torches, but with whispers passed in kitchens and cane fields. Then it erupted. Over 500 enslaved people rose up against the system that had crushed them for generations. Armed with stolen tools and makeshift weapons, they marched toward New Orleans, not just for freedom, but for reckoning. They were met with militia and merciless retribution. What followed wasn't just a massacre, it was a message. Because when history wants to erase you, it doesn't bury the dead, it displays them. Authorities ordered heads cut off and mounted on pikes along the Mississippi River for miles. Over 60 were executed, more were tortured, no names recorded, just numbers, just silence. But silence is a ritual too, and in New Orleans, even forgetting leaves a scar. Tour guides speak of cemeteries and jazz, but not the slaves nailed to trees, not the blood by the river, not the bones beneath highways and parade routes. Historian Leon Waters calls it the most deliberately forgotten event in Louisiana history. He says the ghosts aren't just watching the past, they're watching us. Because if this city was built on the dead, it was fortified with silence. A silence bought with blood. And what happens when celebration grows from soil soaked in screams? The masks come off at Mardi Gras, but some faces don't forget. The parade of masks and the power behind them. Every year, New Orleans explodes with color. Feathers, beads, music, masks. But not all masks are for fun, and not all crews are what they seem. To outsiders, Mardi Gras looks like a party, but beneath the music is something older, a performance of power, layered in hierarchy and secrecy. The oldest crews, the private groups behind the parades, aren't just cultural clubs. Many are secret societies, some dating back over a century. Masonic roots, colonial bloodlines, and one quiet rule: outsiders stay out. What if Mardi Gras isn't about freedom, but about guarding who already has it? Journalist James Gill once wrote, "The spectacle serves a dual purpose, public distraction and private control. While the city parties, power quietly reaffirms itself. These crews crown kings, queens, captains, symbols of who holds land, wealth, legacy. Until the late 20th century, many excluded black residents entirely. Some still operate behind closed doors, guarded by bloodlines and backroom deals. This is the dark side of New Orleans that grins through ritual, where tradition masks control and secrets are passed beneath the music. But the rhythm doesn't lie. Mardi Gras moves in circles. The same roots, the same names, the same hidden hands. So when the music stops, what remains? The Queen of the Dead. She never wore a crown, but everyone in New Orleans knew who ruled the city. Judges feared her, priests condemned her. Thousands followed her into cemeteries, not to mourn, but to ask for favors. Her name was Marie Laveau, and she did not die. At least, not in the way people expected. Born around 1801, Marie was a free woman of color in a world built to erase her. But she didn't just survive. She shaped the city's soul, blending African spirituality, Catholic symbols, and political power into something stronger than superstition. They called it voodoo. For her, it was law, medicine, performance, and control. By the 1830s, she was the most sought-after woman in New Orleans. Businessmen asked for blessings. Politicians whispered her name before elections. Desperate wives begged for help or revenge. Was she a healer or a mirror of the city's fears? Historian Carolyn Morrow Long wrote, "The more they feared her, the more they believed, and the more they believed, the more power they gave her." Marie's rituals in Congo Square turned ancestral rhythms into prophecy. Her ceremonies blurred the line between prayer and possession. When court cases reversed and illnesses vanished, belief became legend. Even death didn't end it. She was buried in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 in a tomb etched with X's, marks left by those still asking for favors. Some say her daughter took her name. Others believe she never left. Because in New Orleans, power doesn't die. It becomes ritual. And when that ritual turns into tourism, what's left? Her name is now printed on candles, dolls, shot glasses. Her tomb is protected by law. But the real Marie, elusive, possibly hidden, she was a queen of the unseen, a mystery, a warning. Ritual for sale. They come with cocktails and cameras. They follow lanterns through alleyways, laugh in cemeteries, and buy curses on keychains. But the question no one asks is this: what happens when a city turns the dead into a business? In New Orleans, the past isn't just remembered, it's monetized. Ghost tours rank among the city's most profitable industries. Night after night, guides spin tales of betrayal, blood, and grief, weaving through haunted voodoo shops, plague pits, and brothels turned bars. But these stories aren't always history. Sometimes they're theater, and sometimes the ghosts don't play along. After Hurricane Katrina, when the city was raw and gutted, a new economy emerged, one built on creepy stories from New Orleans. The darker, the better, the truth. Optional. Tourists didn't want context. They wanted chills. But chills have consequences. What if the rituals didn't stop? They just started charging admission. Anthropologist Martha Ward warned that New Orleans' ritualization of trauma risked not just disrespect, but invitation. In her research, she documented spiritual backlash. Tourists falling ill, experiencing breakdowns, even hallucinations. Voodoo was never meant for show. It was meant to protect. But in a city this hungry for spectacle, even real voodoo magic becomes product. Practitioners descended from the line of Marie Laveau warn, the dead aren't angry because they're forgotten. They're angry because they're used. Graves disturbed, Names exploited, symbols sold to the highest bidder, TikTok seances, selfies in plague pits, rituals reduced to filters, and still, the city performs. Because maybe that's the deeper truth. New Orleans isn't haunted, it's haunting. A ritual still unfolding. Not just nightly, but systemically. Every jazz parade, every king crowned at Mardi Gras, every whispered tour story. This isn't culture, it's repetition. What if the city isn't keeping the ghosts alive, but keeping something else asleep? Anthropologists studying New Orleans secret societies describe the place as a ritual system disguised as tourism. Every crew, every masked ball, every echoing chant, a fragment of older ceremonies. Some West African, some Catholic, some neither. And in the cemeteries, the gravekeepers still follow the rules. Coins for the dead, salt at the door, no names spoken without meaning. Because in New Orleans, memory isn't a story, it's a performance. Repeated so often, the audience forgets it was once real. But the dead don't forget. So ask yourself, if a city becomes a spell, who finally ends it? And what happens if no one ever does? And if you think this city's ghosts are just stories, look no further than the Lalaurie Mansion. In 1834, fire exposed the nightmare that had hidden behind its elegant walls. A secret torture chamber, human remains, and a woman whose cruelty still stains the streets of New Orleans. We explored it all in our deep dive on Madame Lalaurie, her crimes, her escape, and the chilling discoveries made during modern renovations. That story, too, began with silence and ended in screams. Watch it next if you're ready to descend even deeper into the dark heart of this city. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share with your friends. Good night.